Okay, Q, next question.
Thanks, Ed. Our next question is, what early validation methods did you use for Startups.com that signaled it could scale into the world's largest startup launch platform?
Yeah, well, actually, it's funny. So I'll go backward to kind of like how we got here and kind of where that came from. So how we got here is like I mentioned earlier, which was I'd been doing startups for a long time. I just kept getting asked the same questions over and over and over. And at some point, I didn't want to start lots more companies. I got to a point where I was like, you know what? I've done the thing where I start a company and we try to get to an exit. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. And then all we do is just rinse and repeat and try to start over again. It felt vapid. Honestly, like it wasn't about like, hey, can we make money? It was almost like, are we creating any value or are we just building things to like somehow sell them to somebody else? And so I said, what I want to do for the rest of my life, and I've told you this before, like when I started this, I deliberately started this company with this goal because I never wanted to start another company again. I wanted this to be the last thing I ever do. And with that, I thought to myself, all I want to do for the rest of my life is sit around and bullshit with founders all day long and somehow hopefully get paid for it. Now, the first response everybody gets, oh, you have to become an investor. That's how you sit around and bullshit with entrepreneurs. I was like, absolutely not. I would suck at it. I'm not even gonna pretend I'd be good at it, right? I was like, but I am good at like advising founders, but I didn't really know what that looked like. And so I said, let me figure like categorically where I can advise them. So the first place we tried was with fundable.com, which was one of the first crowdfunding sites, like way back in the Kickstarter era, like, 2011, 2012, like when the Jobs Act got passed for the equity side, et cetera. And the idea was let's build a marketplace where people can come on and find investors, which sounds silly now because it's been done a million times. Back then, it was actually pretty new. We launch it and thousands of companies are coming to us saying, we want to raise money. Turns out when you say we have a bucket of money of investors, a lot of people tend to find out who you are, right? And they all come to you. But here's where it got interesting. They all come to us and they say, hey, I need to raise money, blah, blah, blah. Like, cool. Do you have a pitch deck? Do you have any collateral, et cetera? I'm like, not really. Or I do, here it is. And it's terrible, right? And we started to scratch our heads. We're like, well, what are you doing for customer acquisition? Like, well, we haven't figured that out. Or, what did you do to validate the idea? We haven't really figured that out. It started to occur to us that like founders, when they came to us, yeah, they had a capital raising problem, but that was just a prelude to like 900 other problems they either had right now or just about to have. And so then light bulb went off. I was like, what if we just help them with all of them? Which, by the way, is generally a really bad idea. Like as you expand and go broad, that usually means you're kind of going in too many directions at once. So what we did, and this is totally bizarre, but we're weird, so it's what we did. And we said, we're going to buy companies in all of the different spaces that we want to be in customer acquisition, in advising, et cetera, et cetera. And we went out, I moved my family to San Francisco, and I took like 10 meetings a day. I was in nonstop meetings for like a year plus. Wow. And I met with every single startup, mostly venture funded, every single startup that was even remotely in our space that somehow sold to startups. With that, we did diligence on 100 companies and we bought 6 of them, all in rapid fire. All of those companies were covering different parts of the startup ecosystem, like LaunchRock and Clarity and the different products we have. That's what kind of helped get us into the market at scale. But what validated it was just simply listening to customers. And the customers were saying, hey, I need to use your platform, but I kind of not really ready yet. How do I get ready? And that's where like the light bulb went off to say, wait a minute, why isn't anybody getting them ready? Like who's not fixing this problem? And so that's really what led us in there. It was just listening very closely.
We had Vadim, our lead advisor here at Startups.com on yesterday, and Q asked a similar question, like, what's the first thing a founder should do? And his answer was just talk to another human. That's it. Like, go talk to people. And that's goes all the way back to you picking up the phone, talk to people. I think, well, I'm sure you have thoughts on this. Something just happens because we're so connected, social media, that you can actually get by not talking to someone. You read a few posts, you talk on social media, you get your echo chamber of people liking your comment or your little post, say, oh yeah, absolutely. And then you think you've got it all figured out, but people don't talk to each other. I think that's one of the main mistakes that I'm seeing.
I think it's multi-layered. One is, you mentioned the bias, right? That people talk to people within their echo chamber. So yes, if I talk to a whole bunch of people that think exactly like I do, I'm going to get answers that are exactly like mine.
100%.
Right? One of the funniest exercises we go through, I love seeing the expression on the founder's face, is we have them take their pitch deck and we have them present it to other founders, just a bunch of random people they've never met before, but all founders. So contextually, they understand what's in the deck. And they'll present a slide. They'll present like the market size slide. And in the founder's mind, nailed it. They'll present it to 5 smart strangers, and all of them, almost every time without fail, will be like, I have no idea what this means, right? And again, these are smart people that would otherwise know. It's not like I'm showing grandma and grandma doesn't understand what a startup is, right? These are people that absolutely understand it. But it turns out that founder presenting it never presented it to strangers, truly presented it to strangers, people who were just fresh eyes to see it. Now that goes with all kinds of things, not just a pitch deck. It's your ideas, it's your marketing messages, etc. Having lots of fresh eyes to be able to see what you're doing, especially at the formative stages, is so important. And that's why I think a lot of people that are here, they get access to all these founders, and there are a whole bunch of people that actually do want to help them, but we'll also shoot them straight. They'll say, I have no idea what this slide means, but they're smart enough to articulate that and help you get to that point.
Let me give you a story, and you're dealing with this all the time, but this is just a great story to illustrate what Will's talking about. Founder sends me their pitch deck here, Startups.com. I read it, and it's like this generic problem. No one likes vacations, right? And then your solution is we give people great vacations. I'm like,
yep.
Okay, what exactly are we doing this? So then I have to send this email. Said, just explain to me, like you showed up and I'm in junior high and you're at career day. And you're saying, hey, little buddy, this is what I do for my job. And then he types it out and I'm like, this is so cool. Nothing of that was in the pitch deck. And that's what we're talking about. Unless you've got those extra pair of eyes and people check your blind spots, like you're just not going to see the forest for the trees.
You bet. When I get people's pitch decks and I help them out with them, the first thing I say, same as you, let's say everything you just said, but let's say it in half the words. Right. And, fun hack for, ffolks that are listening on the recording or anything later. If you take whatever you wrote and just put it into ChatGPT and say this in half the words, it'll give you a better version almost every single time.
Every time.
It's a hilarious hack. But the simplest terms are the best terms. If funny, we mentioned ChatGPT because one of the things that I was doing with my kids in the car the other day, I was explaining to them how the vocal ChatGPT works, where you could just talk to it. And I said, hey, ChatGPT, explain whatever complex concept I was talking about in terms that an 8-year-old could understand. It immediately converted a very complex problem into something super simple and use an analogy that anybody could understand. And then I did something. I said, explain it again, but use a completely different example and a completely different way of saying it. But again, as an 8-year-old could understand it. Then they explained it again with a completely different example, right? The reason I say this is because we now have that technology where we can say, take this gooey thing that's in my head and say it back to me in someone else's words so I can hear it for the first time. Incredibly powerful.
ChatGPT even analyzed the pictures and gave me analysis on that. It's crazy. It's insane.